Signor Presidente, signore e signori, mia moglie ed io non troviamo parole adeguate per esprimere il nostro immenso piacere nel tornare in Italia e la mia emozione quando mi è stato chiesto di rivolgermi ad un pubblico tanto illustre. I need hardly say that Italy and her people, her culture and traditions occupy a particularly special place in the affections of the British, an affection that my wife and I share wholeheartedly. About 5 million of us visit Italy every year, and 100,000 Britons make their home here. Our histories have been intertwined for over 2,000 years, since Julius Caesar landed on the south coast of England in 55 BC and encountered a little local opposition. Some of our finest cities, including York, Edinburgh, and Bath, owe much to Roman design. In the arts, we have long drawn inspiration from Italian sources, including the many plays by Shakespeare, which have an Italian theme or setting. The enormous influence of Italian artists and composers is hard to quantify. A more recent example of the British drawing on Italian inspiration, of course, is on the football pitch, where the record of England under Fabio Capello suggests it just might be one of the most successful collaborations yet. And again, to prove trade is a two-way relationship, I understand that one of our own footballers has been making quite a good impression in Milan this year. Now, ladies and gentlemen, being bound by such historical and contemporary ties, it is no surprise that British news headlines were dominated by the terrible earthquake in the Abruzzo region earlier this month. As I said in the message I sent immediately to Prime Minister Berlusconi, our hearts went out to you as you began to come to terms with the sheer extent of human suffering and destruction. The people of L'Aquila and the surrounding villages continue to be remembered in our thoughts and prayers. I cannot help but think that this ancient city is a particularly good place to piece together fragments of the past and to learn from them in charting a sure and stable course for the future. The message I want to convey to you today, if I may, is about the greatest threat facing our world, climate change. Yes, it exists. I wish it didn't, but it does. And it is happening far faster than the scientists predicted. The evidence is there, particularly in the Arctic and Antarctic, but there are many who should know better, who still deny the validity of that scientific evidence. I believe that the response we make now to the challenge before us will be the single most critical element in defining our era. And it will be the one by which our generation will be judged, if we care about such things. As the world is struggling with the consequences of the economic crisis in which we find ourselves, you might think this is an odd analysis. But, ladies and gentlemen, I fear that any of the difficulties we face today will be as nothing when the full horror of global warming unfolds. This might sound like hyperbole, but if you take a minute to look at the science of climate change and to understand what will happen if we fail to do anything about it, then you will discover there are not enough words to express the emergency of the situation. The basics of climate change are well known. Fossil fuels, which have captured and stored carbon dioxide for millions of years, are being burnt at an unprecedented rate. We are getting through nature's supplies so quickly that most economists accept that the era of cheap oil, coal and gas is over. Billions of barrels of oil have been burnt in a few decades, oil which, of course, can never be replaced. As we have burnt this oil, we have released huge amounts of carbon dioxide into the air, causing the planet to warm. CO2 is, of course, a greenhouse gas that traps the sun's energy in our atmosphere and causes temperatures to rise. There is no doubt that man's activities are responsible. For instance, you only have to look, as I have done, at the British Antarctic Survey's ice core samples from 3 kilometers in depth, 3 kilometers in depth of ice, which provide atmospheric readings of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere for very nearly the past 1 million years. Not only, ladies and gentlemen, do they show that levels of carbon dioxide began to rise dramatically at precisely the point the Industrial Revolution began in the mid-18th century, but that today carbon dioxide levels are at their highest for 800,000 years. There is no dispute about this. There is a consensus among scientists, and I must say, the world's business leaders also. Now, some 16 years ago, I established with the University of Cambridge a business and environment program in order to try and raise the level of awareness of environmental issues amongst the business sector. Out of this emerged the Corporate Leaders Group on Climate Change. This group, which consists of some of the top global companies, is calling for CO2 cuts that are guided by science. They've already offered their support for an 85% cut in global emissions by 2050.